Hey guys, how's it going? So right now I'll be doing a quick look on the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. This just came in, brand new for 2024, and what I try to do with these type of videos is try to look at things from a slightly different angle. Hopefully I'll cover at least a few things that you have not seen on some of the larger channels. Anyway, so let's just get right into it. Let's just start off with the regular build and design as always, and this is a completely different departure for Google compared to the previous generation Fold. I like the way the metal shines on this particular type of aluminum that they're using, and it's matte on the frame compared to being glossy on the 9 Pro series. There's definitely opinions about which one is preferable. My preference absolutely is for the glossy. Not only does it look more premium in my opinion, but it provides more grip compared to this matte metal. But honestly, 90% of the time you'll be using a case. I'll definitely talk about the official cases in a second, but anyway. And at the back, you're getting a different design. You're not getting the visor as you typically would with every other Pixel phones. And I don't mind it. I don't really have strong opinions on it, so I'm just going to move on from that. Let me know in the comments. But one thing that is definitely prevalent though is the camera bump isn't nearly as thick or as dense as the 9 Pro series. And when we get to the camera section, you'll see that the camera quality does take a pretty sizable hit compared to the 9 Pro series. And we got to talk about the weight. So most foldable phones are heavy, just the nature of it. It's essentially two phones. There's a lot of metal because of the hinge, etc. I get it. This phone is significantly heavier than the Z Fold 6 and the OnePlus Open, but for some reason, I think it's the weight distribution. It doesn't feel like it when it's in your hand. It's actually really comfortable to hold. Even sometimes compared to the 9 Pro XL, it's definitely heavy. I'm not gonna say it's not, but it's not unwieldy in a way that I thought it would just by looking at the spec sheet. So I think they did a lot with the weight distribution to where you're not really feeling it as much on your hand. I mean, if you're holding it in your hand for a long period of time, that will start to add up and it will start to get a little bit uncomfortable. And also, as good as the weight distribution is, when it goes into your pocket, it will be heavy. And if you wear sweatpants or basketball shorts, there's a chance that it can start weighing your pants down. That's been an issue for me with foldables for the longest while. Hopefully next year they can make this phone even lighter. But in terms of the build, I think is top notch. So now let's get into some of the design elements. And this is going to be one of my first gripes. I don't really like that the left portion of the phone is more angular, but then on the right side of it, it's curved. It just looks a bit uneven to me. And especially since you got this gigantic frame to the left-hand side here, it looks like I have a bulky case on it. And on top of that too, look at these bezels. They're incredibly chunky. If you want to compare it, let's take a look at the 9 Pro XL is significantly smaller. And I don't know why Google couldn't use a larger screen on the cover screen. And one of my thoughts is Google saved costs by ordering in bulk the same panels that they're using for the Pixel 9 regular version and then just putting that on here instead of having a specific screen just for the Pixel 9 Fold series. And I mean, this is not a cheap phone. After taxes, it's almost $2,000. I was really expecting better from the cover screen area. You may not care about this at all, and I'm probably spending too much time on just the cover screen, so we can move on. And look how thin the 9 Pro Fold is too. Next to the 9 Pro XL, it's not that much different, and it really helps it feel a lot more like a regular phone. So that's the thing, except for this frame on the side here, this feels like a regular phone. In fact, most of the day when I was using this, I forgot that it was a foldable phone. So let's just open this up and all of my little gripes just go right away. You're greeted to this gigantic screen. It is the largest foldable screen that I've ever used. And this is how the screen looks like compared to the 9 Pro XL. Now, if you want to take a look at it, there's no way to get it as tall as the 9 Pro XL, but overall, it's a much better experience. And this is the part where I really fell in love with. One reason with going with any foldable is the extra screen real estate you get when you're watching a video. So it doesn't matter which orientation you have the 9 Pro Fold in, content will look bigger on this display versus the 9 Pro Fold. So that's a very big win for any foldable. So there's a few things evident here. The bezels are completely even and the entire phone looks a lot more symmetrical. So it actually looks a lot nicer here compared to the cover screen. Okay, so if I shine this against my studio lights, yes, it's gonna look very glary and you're gonna see the crease like crazy. A lot of what the crease is formed from the glare. And the Z Fold 6 had an incredibly glossy screen. I'm gonna try not to let these lights touch it because then it'll look ugly. Nobody's really shining this on their phone anyway. This is more of how you will be seeing it, and it is fairly anti-reflective. Much better reflection handling than the Z Fold 6. And because of that, the crease is a lot less pronounced. I'm angling it in a way to really highlight the crease here, but realistically, I have not been noticing it as much as I did with even the Z Fold 6. I don't know if this screen is as anti-reflective as the OnePlus Open. I don't have this phone anymore, but I think it strikes a good balance. And another thing I've noticed, I'm not able to feel the seam where the screen protector is, so I think it's actually under this bezel here. So maybe if you had to get that repaired, they would have to remove this area. But even towards where the hinge is, I'm not able to see that screen protector, and it makes for a much more seamless experience, and this looks like a much more premium product because of that. So kudos to Google for that. And since we're talking about the screen, the PPI is only 373, and that's fairly low. You want it to be around 400 to not be able to see pixels, but I'm surprised at how good this display looks. They're saying that they're using an ultra thin glass, and that probably helps. So speaking of which, they're advertising up to 2700 nits of outdoor brightness versus the Pixel 9 Pro XL does 3000 nits. And I took them outside, and yes, that seems to be the case. The Pixel 9 Fold does not get as bright outdoor as the Pixel 9 Pro XL. And it was fairly evident. And one thing I've been noticing with every single foldable that I got in is the cover screen is brighter, actually a good amount brighter than the main display, and this is no exception. So as you can see, brightness is 100% on both the cover screen and the main display. Outdoor brightness takes a hit, but like I said before, because the screen is not as reflective as the Z Fold 6, it was actually very usable outdoors in bright sunlight. Hopefully at some point we could get really bright main displays on our foldables. I mean, this is still a new category. There's a lot of room for improvement. I mean, I'm bouncing around a lot, but one thing I didn't talk about yet was the hinge. This hinge feels better than the Z Fold 6. I remember with the Z Fold 6, at least when I just got it, the tension on the folding mechanism wasn't smooth and precise. It felt tighter and looser as you were opening it. This feels completely smooth throughout. It's a little bit difficult to open at first because of how strong these magnets are, but once you get it open, it slides open really easily, and it'll stay upright at several different angles too. One thing I've noticed, and it was the same thing with the Z Fold 6 too, it doesn't actually lock in place when you leave it. It does bounce up a little bit. I'm probably being a little bit too critical, but I don't know. I guess I should just mention it. Anyway, but the hinge has been great so far. This is only the first day. Well, I'll have to see how it holds up long term. And another thing that, at least to my eyes, this opens completely flat. So one thing that almost everyone will be doing though is putting a case on it, and there's some really cool things about the official case. I like the blue felt on the inside, just gives it a nice little touch. And this material is more of a harder polycarbonate versus silicone material on the Pixel 9 Pro cases, so they are different. Just thought you should know that. So it slaps on really easily, and the one on the cover screen comes with those adhesive strips. So it's one of those things you don't want to take it on and off too many times. And this is how it looks like with the case. And I will be using this case for my entire experience with this phone because it's almost $2,000 and I do not want it to fall down and break. So let's get into some of the software elements of the 9 Pro Fold. I haven't seen too much unique things, but one thing is this dock comes up by swiping up to the bottom. I do feel like it gets a little bit confusing. Sometimes you want to bring up the dot, but you accidentally go home, so you just have to kind of remember to bring it up a little bit and hold it. But if you bring it up a little bit more and hold it, that's when it brings up the recents. And a lot of similar actions to perform each one of them, so I think it'll take some muscle memory to get it down because there is a bit of confusion. But one thing I love about foldables is in any screen you are, even in the web browser like I am here, you can bring up the app drawer without having to go home. And I like how it floats on top of the app that you're using. And even when you bring up the app drawer in the home screen, it brings it up as an overlay too. It's a nice little touch. So one potential issue that some people may have, I don't really care though, is you could only have two apps open at a time and maybe a floating. No, maybe no. Actually, I forgot. Google right now doesn't support floating windows, but honestly, I never really have more than one or two apps open at a time. And with phones, 90% of the time, I'm just using recents to go back and forth between them. So this is not something I've ever missed. I know if this is something that bothers you, I completely get it. So I will mention it for that reason. So in terms of multitasking, Google quite isn't there compared to the competition. And one thing I really like that Google has implemented is, say you want to open up an app, you just open it, close the screen, and then you're invited to swipe up to continue. So you're able to go back to the cover screen and use your app in a more one-handed mode, which might be useful in that situation. So you can turn that on by going into the display settings and then going to continue using apps on fold. And I have mine set to swipe to continue, or you can set it up to always. And I think that's a very useful feature. And alright guys, so let's get into the camera right now. Instead of me just showing a whole bunch of pictures, I want to highlight what makes these two cameras different between the Pixel 9 Pro and the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. So the first thing you'll notice is the background blur. Take a look at this. This one is from the Pixel 9 Pro and this one is from the Fold. Because it is a smaller sensor, you're not able to get the same amount of bokeh effect in there. And that, to me, that makes a really big difference. One of the main reasons why I would always prefer to go with the Pixel 9 Pro XL versus the Fold. And you can see even by the plant phase here. You're also getting more noise with the Fold as well too, as you can see the quarters. And another thing that's a little bit subtle is, take a look at these flowers. You can see there's more colors on the 9 Pro XL in terms of the different shades of purple that it's able to represent. There's more of a fall off, there's more better gradients. It just looks a little bit more pleasing. But one thing I've noticed, and I've pixel peeped a whole bunch of pictures on my 4K 32-inch monitor, and in terms of sharpness, once the ISO is low enough, they look very similar. And in this case, it's no exception. Here's another example. So as I start to zoom in, you can actually see a lot of detail in the sharpness itself too. And that's present on the Fold as well too, but not as much. You have to zoom in very, very close to see any type of difference. And in some situations, the Fold might look sharper because there's less out of focus area. But overall, I'm actually really happy with the amount of sharpness in the 9 Pro Fold, even though this is only using a 1/2-inch sensor. But like I mentioned before, I think the colors are a little more natural and better represented on the Pixel 9 Pro XL. And it's the same thing with this picture. To the right is the 9 Pro XL, and you can see there's more background blur. It helps separate the subject a lot more, which is this red plant here. And once again, you can see that the reds are a bit oversaturated, and the greens actually on the Fold, while it's more naturally represented on the 9 Pro. This image looks way more lifelike to me, and it's fairly subtle, but you're not losing too much detail in terms of color and sharpness in both of them. The big difference is the better color rendition and obviously that bokeh blur. And guess what? Even if you use the 5x zoom, same thing. Look at the amount of blur where you're fully able to separate the spider versus the background is getting a little bit blurred in to the spider itself. And even when you zoom in, you can see there's not much detail on the spider itself, but on the 9 Pro XL, there's a lot more detail. So the cameras are a lot better on the Pixel 9 Pro XL. And here's one more example using the 5x lens. You can see way more blur in the background on the 9 Pro XL, and also the contrast is better on the 9 Pro XL too, along with the level of detail too. So if you were to zoom into this can here, you can see there's a lot more detail on the 9 Pro XL. So you are taking a bit of a quality loss by going with the Fold versus the regular 9 Pro XL. The sensor size alone is enough to cause a difference, but the Pixel actually has really good quality lenses, which make a really big difference too, especially when it comes to the blurring of the backgrounds. One benefit of going with the 9 Pro series of the Pixel is you get autofocus on the front-facing lens. So take a look at the background. It's slightly blurred. And if I just tap on the background, it gets in focus and my face gets a little bit blurry and I can go back and forth. But with the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, you don't get that benefit of having autofocus on the camera. So you have to make sure you have to make sure that the camera is pretty far from your face to make sure it's in focus. Because if you get a little bit too close, the minimal focal distance isn't enough to capture your selfie videos if that's what you're into. But what cannot be beaten is with the 9 Pro Fold, you can flip the camera around and use the rear facing camera, the main sensor, to capture these type of images. And so then because of that, you can even switch to the ultra wide. So maybe in a way for blogging, this might be the best move possible. And if you were crazy, you could do the 5x zoom. Oh my gosh. All right, so if I didn't cover anything in this video, just fire away in the comments. I look at all of them and I'm going to start compiling a list of what to do in my second video on the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. Maybe after a week, after I've used it for a little bit longer, to see how this fits into my daily life. So anyway, with that being said, if you like this video, like it. If you want to see more of this kind of stuff, hit that subscribe button. And yeah, I'll see you guys later on. Thanks a lot. Bye.